After graduation, I silently transferred my grandparents' multi-million-dollar property into an irrevocable trust. Just wait. I can still recall the precise moment my parents decided I no longer had a place in my grandparents' home. They didn't shout, they didn't pause, they simply smiled. My sister stood between them, poised and assured, already picturing herself in every room. "We've taken care of the documents," she said casually. "The property belongs to me now. You need to leave by Friday." What they never thought to ask was what I had done immediately after my college graduation. Silently, lawfully, irreversibly, I didn't protest or break down. I simply agreed, moved aside, and allowed them to walk away believing they had triumphed. 2 days later, they returned with a moving crew and discovered why doors can appear open when they're actually sealed shut. My name is Sophia, and from a young age I learned how to occupy the smallest possible space in my own family. Love in our home was never generous or affectionate. It was calculated, weighed, and constantly compared. And I always fell short. My younger sister never had to effort. She was the favored one, the child my parents instinctively shielded and indulged. If she desired something, it was presented as essential. If I desired the same thing, it was labeled a chance to build character. I learned to accept, to wait patiently, to bury disappointment without a sound. From the outside, we appeared normal. Family gatherings, holiday pictures. A household that neighbors called tight-knit. But behind closed doors, affection flowed in only one direction, and I survived on whatever remained. The single place that ever felt truly safe was my grandparents' home. They lived in a quiet seaside village, where the breeze always carried hints of salt and evergreen. Their house was set just far enough from the shore that you could hear the waves at night without being disturbed. The porch steps groaned in the same familiar spots. Wind chimes rang gently whenever the air shifted. When I was there, no one hurried me. No one measured me against anyone else. My grandmother listened as if every sentence I spoke carried weight. My grandfather gradually gave me small tasks, then larger ones, errands, doctor visits, eventually handling bills and accounts when their memory began to fade. As they aged, I was the one who appeared reliably. Not only for special occasions or photographs, but on regular, unremarkable days. My parents and sister came as well, but usually when it suited their schedule. Mostly when there was something to settle. I didn't dwell on it then. I told myself families are complex, that people express care in different ways, that preserving harmony was worth the price. By the time I crossed the stage at graduation, my grandparents had passed away. Yet that house remained the last place where I had ever felt truly valued. That's why, when conversations about the property resurfaced, they didn't strike me as harmless. They felt all too familiar, and for the first time I refused to dismiss that instinct. At first, the inquiries arrived dressed in worry. "So, what's your plan for the house?" my mother asked one evening, her tone light, as if discussing weekend weather. She swirled her tea, staring into the cup instead of at me. "It's a big burden for one person," my father chimed in days later. "Taxes are expensive. Upkeep isn't cheap either. You don't want to be overwhelmed." My sister was subtler. She'd drop by unannounced, always with a plausible excuse. Returning something Mom left behind, collecting a box she insisted was hers. Each visit, her eyes scanned the furniture, the hallways, the little desk where I kept routine paperwork. At least routine to me. "You still manage all the utilities?" she asked once, smiling brightly. "Payments and everything, just wondering." I tried not to overthink it, but the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. The remarks continued, always cloaked in fairness, in togetherness, in doing what was right. It wouldn't be right for one person to keep it all. Your grandparents would have wanted it divided. "We're only helping you plan ahead." I'd heard this wording before. It was the same careful phrasing my parents used whenever they needed to quietly redirect something away from someone else. What finally shattered my self-doubt wasn't one particular statement. It was a recollection. Years earlier, I'd seen my parents borrow money from an aunt for an emergency. They swore to repay it. Then they sidestepped the subject until the obligation vanished. When the aunt pressed, she was suddenly painted as demanding, selfish, unreasonable. I remembered how swiftly the narrative changed. That night, alone in my apartment, I replayed every recent exchange. The smiles, the timing, the renewed interest. It no longer felt random. It felt deliberate. The following morning, I took an extended lunch and visited a discreet downtown law office. An estate attorney listened without interruption while I explained everything: the background, the property, the endless probing questions. When I finished, he leaned back and said something that landed deep inside me. If your family assumes they have a claim, delay only makes their path easier. He outlined my choices clearly and calmly. What could be safeguarded? What couldn't? What often happens when people act before verifying? I didn't waver. By the time I stepped back into the daylight, something essential had changed. I was no longer merely responding. I was deciding. I didn't inform my parents. I didn't alert my sister. I didn't alter my behavior or daily habits. I allowed them to assume I remained the same compliant, unobtrusive person they'd always known. Because if they believed I was passive, they would advance. And that was precisely where I wanted them. The legal process wasn't theatrical. There were no outbursts, no dramatic exits, no declarations of righteousness. Just signatures, dates, and patient explanations of each clause. An irrevocable trust is intentionally deliberate, methodical. Once established, it cannot be reversed impulsively, and that was the purpose. The house, the remaining funds, all my grandparents had built was placed beyond later reinterpretation. I listened more than I spoke. I asked clarifying questions. I took careful notes. When it was complete, I left with a slim folder that appeared ordinary, though it held extraordinary power. Afterward, I resumed my routine as though nothing had shifted. I arrived at work punctually. I answered my parents' calls. I greeted my sister with the same polite smile when she appeared, still carrying that air of quiet ownership. They interpreted my composure as indecision. Invitations to family meals grew more frequent. Conversations turned unusually warm, almost sentimental. My mother reminisced about old traditions. My father spoke of how wonderful it would be for everyone to gather again. My sister casually mentioned renovations she'd make if the place were ever mine, watching my reaction closely. I offered them nothing, no defenses, no guarantees, no commitments, just enough courtesy to keep the surface calm. In private, I recorded everything: dates, texts, the phrasing of questions, the unspoken assumptions. I didn't need confrontation. I only needed preparation in case they overstepped. And eventually, they did. The first sign was sudden urgency. My mother phoned one afternoon, her tone strained beneath a veil of worry. "We must discuss the house soon," she said. "It can't be delayed." Then my sister messaged, brief and certain, "We'll stop by this weekend. Easier to go over everything in person." I didn't ask for details. By then, I understood exactly what they intended. They equated quiet with vulnerability, hesitation with fear. Because I had always yielded before, they assumed I would again. They expected the pattern to repeat. I let them hold that expectation. When they finally arrived, smiling too broadly, standing too closely together, I recognized the expression instantly. It was the look of people convinced the outcome was already settled. They began cautiously, then grew bolder, and finally spoke with absolute conviction. They believed they were announcing a done deal. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct. I didn't raise my voice. I simply listened. Because by the time they finished declaring what they thought had happened, the true resolution had been secured weeks earlier. And they were moments away from learning it. They arrived on a dull morning when the sea lay flat and still, as if waiting. I was on the porch when their car crunched onto the gravel. I noticed small details first: the sound of tires, my sister exiting first with an eager smile. My parents followed, aligned and resolute, as though they'd practiced this scene. My sister wasted no time. "We've handled everything," she announced, waving a sheaf of papers. "The deed is in my name now. We thought it would be simplest." She tilted her head sympathetically. "You'll need to vacate by Friday." My mother nodded, voice gentle. "It's not personal, dear, it's just what works best for everyone." My father added, "You have your life in the city. This property requires someone who can truly oversee it." They were all smiling, as if granting me a kindness. I glanced at the documents without taking them. The stamps looked convincing at first sight: blue signatures, sharp corners, authority on every sheet. They believed the matter was closed. A profound calm washed over me. Not panic, not rage, just certainty. "Okay," I said. That single word eased them. My sister breathed out, triumphant. My mother's posture softened, relief visible. They mistook my steadiness for capitulation. I moved aside to let them pass. My sister brushed by with a satisfied smirk. "We'll return soon," she said. "Likely with movers, better to manage it all at once." I nodded. I even smiled. 2 days later they came back, this time with a large moving van. I observed from inside as it parked behind their car, bright white against the overcast sky. 2 workers hopped out, stretching, already eyeing the house like a standard assignment. My parents appeared invigorated. My sister radiated confidence. "This won't take long," she declared, clapping once. "We'll have everything cleared before lunch." I walked onto the porch, but I wasn't alone. Beside me stood a man they didn't know, middle-aged, professionally dressed, composed in the manner of someone delivering finality. He carried a thick folder under one arm, unmistakably official. The moment lingered. The workers paused first. One halted mid-stride, sensing the change. My sister's smile wavered. My parents glanced at each other. The man advanced slightly and spoke first. "I need to verify identities," he said evenly, reciting their names without error. "I'm here concerning the legal status of this residence." My father scowled. "Who are you?" The man opened the folder just enough to reveal the pages inside. "I represent the County Property Records Division. This home was placed into an irrevocable trust several weeks ago. Miss Sophia is the sole trustee." Silence fell heavily. My sister let out a short, anxious laugh. "That can't be right. We have documentation." He nodded politely. "I've reviewed it." My mother moved closer. "There's obviously a misunderstanding. We rectified an oversight in the estate." "There was no oversight," he replied steadily. "Any effort to alter ownership without trustee approval is invalid." My sister paled. "That's impossible," she insisted. "Everything was filed correctly." The man turned a page. "The submission used an unauthorized service. The notary credentials do not align with state databases. That alone nullifies the transfer." One worker coughed awkwardly. "So, should we hold off?" "No," the man answered, eyes fixed on my family. "You should not continue." My father's tone sharpened. "Are you implying wrongdoing?" "I'm stating recorded facts," he said. "Further attempts to occupy this property could become a legal issue." My sister turned to me, stunned. "You arranged this." I held her gaze steadily. "I safeguarded what was never yours to claim." My mother's voice broke. "How could you do this to your own family? After all we've sacrificed for you." I kept my voice low. "You arrived with a moving truck," I said. "You informed me I had until Friday to leave. You didn't ask, you declared." My father started to speak, then stopped. The assurance he'd carried was gone, replaced by fragility. The man passed my father a copy of the notice. "This records today's attempted action and serves as official caution." The workers were already retreating, muttering apologies. One climbed into the cab without further direction. My sister remained rooted, papers sagging in her grip. "This isn't finished," she said faintly. I nodded once. "That decision belongs to you now." They didn't argue further. They didn't threaten. They didn't beg. They simply departed. I watched their car vanish down the drive, the moving van trailing behind, gravel gradually settling. The man beside me closed his folder. "They'll reconsider before trying again." I thanked him, saw him off, then stood alone on the porch. The ocean remained unchanged. The breeze stayed the same. But something within me had transformed. For the first time, I wasn't anticipating the next loss. I was rooted exactly where I was meant to be. The aftermath didn't erupt. It imploded. No more unannounced visits, no more cheerful calls masked as care. Messages ceased, then phone calls. A week later, a letter arrived from their lawyer, formal and curt, withdrawing all claims to the property and requesting no additional contact. I read it once and stored it away without fanfare. Word spread quietly afterward. Relatives who had echoed vague rumors sent hesitant apologies. Others said nothing. I pursued neither response. I had no interest in repairing one-way connections. What mattered was the quiet that finally arrived. I drove back to the seaside house on a calm Sunday afternoon, parked in the familiar spot, and turned the key slowly. Inside, the scent of aged timber mingled with faint lavender from sachets my grandmother placed long ago. Sunlight crossed the floors exactly as it always had. I moved through every room without hurry. No tightness in my chest, no listening for approaching footsteps. The trust fulfilled its purpose. The records were secure. The boundary was firm. For the first time, I understood genuine security, not merely the lack of strife, but the presence of limits that endured. I brewed tea, settled on the porch, and watched the tide rise and fall. The house no longer felt like a victory I'd defended. It felt like a commitment I'd honored. That evening, as darkness gathered, I stood on the porch while the waves continued their steady rhythm, undisturbed, just as the house had always stood. For the first time, I wasn't tensing around people who claimed the title of family. I wasn't diminishing myself to maintain calm. I had learned what my grandparents knew instinctively. Protecting yourself isn't harshness. It's necessity. If you've ever had to establish boundaries with those who should have guarded you, know you're not alone. Share your experience below and follow for the next story. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories. Get more experiences.